Gunnar, Paddock, Duran, Bader, now Stewart. We're going to talk about it all. This is the Locked On Twins live trade deadline special.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warne. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Dave Brown. He is a BBWAA member, a Joe Mauer Hall of Fame voter. I am a 30-year Twins watcher and a zero-time Hall of Fame voter, but maybe someday. Dave, how we doing?
I'm a Twins voter. I'm a Joe Mauer. I'm just trying to take in all the trades, Brandon. There's been lots of activity going on right now, and it's all processing, man. It's processing.
Yes, and so thank you for hanging out with us. You can find my work on my newsletter, Access Twins. Dave is all over the place, but zone coverage is a good place to catch his Twins writing. Thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If you're hanging out with us right now, it's on YouTube. And of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Love to hear from you in the chat. We are going to, I think, hang here for about the next hour. I do have a prior engagement with some school stuff for my daughter, but we'll see what happens. Maybe hop on again after that. But
a Mark Prior engagement. That's a different kind of prior.
Exactly. And we are here to tell you about all different sorts of stuff going on since we last convened. So the last thing we talked about was the Jhoan Duran trade, getting a couple of prospects back in that deal. Since then, Harrison Bader out the door, Brock Stewart out the door. The return for Bader, we know, a couple pieces from the Phillies. Twins can't help themselves dealing with the Phillies, a 16-year-old pitcher and then a young outfielder with some pretty good on-base skills. All things considered, we got a lot to get to here, and I trust that more will break as we discuss this hour. But initial reaction, Dave, where are you at?
It's still a shock, but it isn't surprising, if that makes any sense. As soon as they traded Duran yesterday, you knew it was really on, and you kind of knew it was on when they said, all right, we're going to trade Paddock. When they gave up any resources for really trying to compete this season, it became selling time, and it is probably the right thing to do, as disappointing as it is on some level, because Twins fans, a lot of them, some of them, media too, expected the Twins to compete for the playoffs, to make them like they did in 23, do better than they did in 24. In 25, it's been a different kind of disappointing season so far. I still thought that they had time to get back in it, mostly because the rest of the teams weren't that good. And there wasn't that much of a hurdle to climb. There's lots of teams to climb, but not necessarily good teams. But Pablo's injury obviously changes the calculus a lot there. That's really what maybe precipitated this. So pleased, I guess, with the return so far with Duran. Pleased with the return on Bader. It's made some Phillies fans really angry. I mean, that doesn't take much, but It's still good that their prospect hounds are kind of worried about it. We don't know yet, I believe, what the return for Brock Stewart is. Brock Stewart's a guy that people really like. Personally, it's been a good story. He's been terrific this year. The Dodgers are going to be able to pitch him in high leverage, and they're going to be improved. We don't know what's coming back. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't expect someone like DePaula to come back, but the Dodgers still have lots and lots of good players in their farm system. And the Twins should be able to get one or two or so for Stewart. So we'll see.
Well, we do know what's not coming back, and that's Brock Stewart. As that, news breaks, we'll have that. If we circle back for the Bader return, Hendry Mendez, not Mendez, but Mendez, corner outfielder in the Phillies system, and 40 walks, 44 strikeouts, slash a 290, 374, 434. At Reading in Double-A, so about 3 years younger than the average player. He doesn't turn 22 for about another 100 days, November 7th. So we are going to get to see him probably at Wichita, although we'll see. A lot of this is going to be fluid too, because every team's farm system is built a little differently. And so where the Twins have needs, or maybe where they see these players, is a little different than their initial organization. But with that said, Mendez first came up, in the Brewers system, now with the Phillies, and not much center field. He's been pretty much restricted to a corner. So we'll see what that looks like. And then in addition to Mendez, Twins getting a right-handed pitcher named Geremy Viloria. I'm guessing it's Viloria based on how that usually sounds.
How Spanish names are usually pronounced, yes.
Villoria, and 16 years old, so probably born 2008 or 2009, which if we thought that Tate yesterday being born in 2006 was wild, I'm here to tell you 2008 or 2009, whole new ball game.
He's got a 19-4 strikeout to walk ratio in 14 innings at 16 years old. That's way too young. If Mrs. Brown were here, she would be lamenting how we make these kids get to work at 16. It's crazy. They do it in hockey too. They do it in soccer. Sometimes even younger than that. But I'll hold off on my outrage a little bit on Mr. Viloria. But he's off to a great start as a 16-year-old. It's like yesterday people were worried about the 18-year-old catcher that the Twins got in a trade, and now they're getting even younger here. Who knows? Will the Twins still be in Minnesota by the time this guy gets to the majors? We're worried about who will own the team. Will it be the Polads? When does the lease run out at Target Field? So, hey, we'll just sort of watch his progress very slowly here at 16. My goodness.
So Mendez was part of the trade that sent Robert Moore and Mendez to Philly for Oliver Dunn, second baseman Oliver Dunn. So not a trade that was super high on my radar back then, but I really have no issue with that. Again, I'm trying to be as distant as I can from the idea that these free agent guys were going to be gone anyway. And I also think too that, sorry, our friend Grant just retweeted Trevor Richards to the Twins as a bit from last year.
That's not nice.
That's not very nice.
He's a 2-pitch pitcher. So
yeah. Strikes and wild pitches.
Wild.
What was it again? Wild.
I don't remember. Something in wild. Yeah.
Change up in wild.
Atterbury out here to tell us.
Yeah, I love Chris Atterbury. Still waiting on the Brock Stewart return. I know somebody was asking that in the chat. Our friend Skylar. I would assume we'll know it pretty soon. Do you have in any sort of thought like what they should be targeting here? Because I've said this on previous shows, and I don't know. Somebody just retweeted Kenta Maeda now. We've got some real trolls on our
That's terrible.
There's our friend Tony. So they know we're live and they think they're tripping us up. But I think
is that what they're doing? That's not that's even worse.
I don't think so. But I wonder if Noah Miller might not be someone they target to bring back the shortstop position, especially defensively in this system. I don't know that it's where catcher was 48 to 50 or 72 hours ago, but they could use a good defensive shortstop. I mean, I could see that being, and the Dodgers system is fun. I mean, it's always fun. It's always got a varied bevy of all different types of pitchers, hitters, etc., and that sort of thing. So I'll be curious to see who comes back there. Brian White says he thinks they're waiting to tell Shohei first. Yeah, maybe he's hard to get a hold of. But
well, he did just leave the game yesterday as a pitcher. So, but it was because of dehydration, or Shohei did, or it was something like that. It's not an arm injury, but he threw like 6 straight balls in a row. Yes, absolutely. Fortunately, what kind of return could I expect for Brock Stewart? That's an interesting question. Look at the. If you look at the Mason Miller trade, the incredible haul that they got from Mason Miller and JP Sears, the Padres and the A's, I think people have forgotten this, but I would say 6 weeks ago, Mason Miller was so lost that people were wondering if the A's would ever find him again. I mean, he was still throwing 103 miles an hour, but he couldn't throw strikes. He was getting hit. He couldn't get any saves. It was like, what's wrong with this guy? They have to.
His numbers when the Twins were in Sacramento were bad. His Sacramento numbers were when the Twins were in Sacramento and everybody on the Twins was getting hurt, he had a very high, I think he was like a 5-something ERA. So it was, it got ugly. And I don't know. You think they'll eventually make him start? I don't know.
Who knows? I don't know. All I know is that the Padres this year are going all in with the bullpen. So they've added a bunch of great relief pitchers. AJ Preller is always doing daring trades and trading the number 3 or so prospect overall, Leo DeVries, an infielder. That's quite a commitment. We'll see if the Padres are up to it come playoff time. But but getting back to my point, just look at how the outlook for Mason Miller is. Just a couple of weeks ago, people are like, well, is this guy going to be fixed? And all of a sudden now he's back to where he was before, and he's part of probably the biggest trade of deadline season. It's going to be, I would imagine, with the Padres. And then, so like, what's Brock Stewart worth? Well, he's not worth that, and he's not worth what Duran got back.
Well,
so
good point from one of the listeners, by the way. Read this. Given Brock's medical history, there's a lot to check out. Dan Hayes makes a good point. Thank you, Brian, for sharing that with us. Although, you know who's going to know those medical records about as good as anybody?
The Dodgers.
Los Doyers. So
the Dodgers cannot help themselves. They can't help themselves acquiring pitchers with deep injury histories, especially apparently injury histories that happened while they were with Dodgers too. So, I wouldn't expect, a top 10 prospect, but the Dodgers also have a deep enough farm system that if the Twins scouting is good and they guess right, they should be able to get 1 or 2 players that will at least appear to help their minor league system, if not the Twins big league team someday.
All right, let's take a quick pause. We do have to get some breaks in here to make sure everybody gets their proper credit and all that. Please credit. And then when we come back, I want to ask you about a lot of things. We'll have some questions come in from the stream again, too. If you're watching on the stream, feel free to leave questions. We would love to hear from you. We've already had some tremendous comments. Yandy Diaz leaves the game, but not because he was traded, but because he's getting x-rays. So a lot going on.
Time for that.
Not just the Twins. Yeah, he's not getting precautionary x-rays, I don't think. So anyway, a quick moment here, and then when we come back, I want to ask you about a little more about the Mason Miller trade. Well, we got to give some love to Supply House. You can get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. And their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros like Nice Trade Falvey, looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program, I wonder if Falvey graduated from that, offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5, that's SamHorn5, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, we're back here hanging out on the trade deadline edition of Locked On Twins Live. We've got a lot of fun comments and some not so fun comments in the in the comment section. Gregory says abolish Brandon Warne. Okay.
How do we do that? How do we make that happen?
If my mom knew how, she would have figured it out a long time ago. Let's talk about No. What did you have something?
I did. I wanted to read what Brock Stewart said to Dan Hayes about possibly being traded. He said this yesterday. It's not the elephant in the room because that doesn't get talked about, which is a great point. I think elephant in the room, people don't necessarily know what the elephant is sometimes or what that means. Mm-hmm. We talk about trades every day. It is what it is. It's the way it goes. I love Dodger Stadium. That'd be cool. There's a couple teams that would be cool, but I love it here in Minnesota, Brock Stewart says. I believe in this team. But the core guys, obviously, this year isn't going very well, but the core guys, hopefully we can stick around and build on it. So that isn't happening. But Stewart is a guy who, came to the Twins and had lots of hopes for, despite an injury history. And, knock on wood, he's been healthy this season. And I think he's going to help the Dodgers a lot for the rest of this season. He's a lot better relief pitcher than they, for the most part, have in their bullpen. I'm trying to think of who the guys are that they have who are pitching, who are healthy, who are pretty good. And he's up there at the top of the list right now. So, like I said, I don't know if that warrants a top 10 prospect, maybe at the end of the top 10, the Dodgers overall. But I think that the Twins will get something for Stewart, and it makes sense to move him. I think Danny Coulombe, there's no reason to keep him. I don't want to sound like that. Mm-hmm. But at 35 years old, a guy who's already been on the injured list this year, he's got a ceiling of maybe 55 innings, and he's more than halfway there, obviously. So it would make sense that he would go. And who else is left at this point that people are going to – Willi Castro. So there's going to be at least 2 more trades, maybe 3. I don't think it's going to be anybody like Jax, but it could be. That would probably be the most surprising thing to me at this point. But it's going to be surprising if Coulombe and Castro also are not dealt.
The way they gave Castro that quasi whatever that was in the 9th inning tells me that they fully expect him gone. I just how strange would it be on Friday for him to come in and be like, "Hey, still here, guys." Like, I don't know. I just that to me would be particularly strange. Good friend Skylar says, "I'm fully expecting Castro and Coulombe gone today." Yeah, I think at this point, anything that's not attached for longer than this year can go. One thing I wondered about, excuse me, this air quality is absolutely killing me. So I'm going to try not to clear
turn it into Kaufman Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of wondered though if the Twins had gone like bigger picture with the Dodgers, if they would have done something along the lines of reliever and Vasquez if they were getting back Rushing. Now, again, I know Rushing is a tremendous prospect, but if you were putting your planting your flag saying we have to have a stud if we're trading you Griffin Jax, I feel like Jax, Vasquez, I don't know if something else would have to go, but you could have gotten Rushing back. That's where a team would value Vasquez, a team like the Dodgers, a team, like the Astros when they won the World Series had Vasquez and Maldonado back there. You don't have to have a world-beating offensive catcher to be a good team. And so I'm not saying I want Vasquez to go. I'm not saying I think he's going to go. But it's funny to me that there's no steam on that. I think he would have some value, especially if the Twins ate some, if not all of the money.
I don't think I wrote this. I might have said it. I definitely thought it. That I thought the Dodgers were a good place to maybe send 2 relief pitchers. I thought maybe Stewart and Coulombe would make sense for their bullpen, and maybe it still could turn into that. And when you're talking about dealing those 2 guys, then maybe, with another part, you get a guy like Rushing back. The issue, the Dodgers just traded for Ben Rortvedt yesterday, so I don't know if that's just an organizational thing, or is that a contingency plan for possibly trading Rushing somewhere. Dalton Rushing has been he's a really good prospect, but maybe more importantly to the Dodgers this year, he's allowed them to put Will Smith to give him some days off, to give him a breather sometimes, and Smith has been his best self so far this season with Rushing on the roster. So he's kind of an important piece to how the Dodgers operate this season. I've also heard some talk from Dodgers writers about, well, what's the long-term deal with Will Smith? Is Will Smith going to be a third baseman or a first baseman? Are they looking at, Max Muncy's option next year is really ridiculously cheap. I mean, it's like $10 million or something, much less than you'd think. So he's coming back. You got Freddie Freeman. Is Will Smith going to move to a corner? Are they holding out on Rushing until that happens, in 2 years, let's say? Maybe. So, I mean, that would be a guy that the Twins already have acquired a couple catchers, of course, in this trade deadline season. What's one more? But Rushing would be a guy that you could obviously put in the lineup tomorrow if they happen to do something. I'd be totally for that. I don't, I would think that Stewart and Coulombe would get Rushing done if the Dodgers were in a mood to move him, and I'm just not sure if they are.
It's a good question from Skylar, wondering who's going to come up when the dust settles. I think what's important to note is this is going to open up spots for guys more along the lines of Edouard Julien and Austin Martin and those kinds of guys, as opposed to Kiersey, who was kind of pigeonholed by the fact that he's a defensive outfielder who can run a little bit, finally showed off some power. How about that? Actually, I'm just joking. But it
hit
seems
a home
to
run,
me,
yeah.
He did hit a home run. It seems to me, though, it'll be less along the lines of a Gasper Kiersey situation, but they'll bring up some guys who have a chance to memaybe stake their claim to a spot. Carson McCusker probably in that conversation. On the pitching side of things, you're going to see. I mean, Noah Davis and Michael Tonkin and Cody Funderburk are already up here. I don't know if there'll be any shuffling in that regard, and it's unclear. Will Marco Raya eventually get a shot, or
Marco Raya?
Yeah, Polo. Luke Keeschel getting close. The fun thing here is that Bailey Ober getting closer. At some point, Pablo's going to go out on a rehab. All is not lost for this team in terms of big league skill, big league talent. They're still going to have a roster that should be at least fun / interesting to watch down the home stretch.
I don't want to get anybody too excited, especially coming. I mean, I still get whatever happened in the previous game. I have like a recency effect about it. I kind of have sort of a down feeling about the entire season based on them losing to the Red Sox by 10 runs or whatever it was. If they don't get too far out of it, I could see A, after all these trades, B, after bringing some of these guys up, Keeschel mostly, Bailey Ober, Pablo, I could see the Twins possibly hanging around if their great players have outsized results the rest of the season. If Carlos Correa gets hot, if Buxton gets hot again, if Wallner gets hot or stays hot. Is he hot yet? I don't know. Keeschel comes up and hits like he did before. So there's still, Abel comes in and pitches like Paddock did at his best. Bailey Ober comes back and pitches like Bailey Ober did before he got lost in the woods or in the Missouri woods or whatever that was.
Sasquatch in woods, yes.
Something like that. So, but possibly more pertinent, the Twins are still, even with all these trades that they're making right now and more to come, they're not that far away from being, again, in a position to compete. They're not the White Sox or the Rockies. They're not in the back of the league. They're in the middle of the league, the bottom of the middle of the league, but still in the middle of the league. So I would say continue to have a little bit of hope and patience. Hope. Maybe it's Zaire Hope. Maybe Zaire Hope is coming back for Brock Stewart. Has Carlos Correa signed off on the medicals yet? I don't know. I haven't seen.
Austin Martin since July 1st hitting 250, 381 on base, 324 slug. So the slug hasn't been there. Only a handful of extra base hits. But for the year, he's hitting between all levels, 311 with a 422 on base, 385 slug. So basically, you see is what you get with him. Whether he becomes a utility man or what level of utility man he becomes, I think depends on if he can luck his way into a few more doubles here or there. But he'll get a shot. I think McCusker will get a shot. And it's going to be a new blood situation, and I think as much as I was maybe one of the last believers in the skill level of the 26 guys that they had assembled, what's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. Now you're switching out. I mean, yeah, I'll miss Harrison Bader doing the Shane McMahon shuffle, going to get fly balls, and I'll miss
his hair.
I'll miss Jhoan Duran coming in and blowing people away in the ninth inning with a 7-1 deficit when we're down. But I'm kidding. Lately, he's been working in those situations. However, I don't know. I enjoy seeing new faces. I enjoy seeing new configurations. And so I think that come Friday in Cleveland, this is going to be a whole new roster, and it will have a new energy. And I don't know what that means exactly, but I also think, all those bad vibes, all that bad mojo, none of the guys that are traded from this team do I think are responsible for that individually. But I think, it's like pruning. I'm looking at my flowers out front here, and I've got some really beautiful flowers, and then I've got some deadheads. You got to prune those, and then everything comes back. I wouldn't be shocked if that is kind of like a new blood, a new energy, a new something happens in Cleveland on Friday. And hopefully it's the Twins and not the Guardians, who also appear to be, pruning quite significantly after trading Bieber. A good return for Bieber, I thought. And we'll see what happens with Steven Kwan here in the next 3.5 hours. But ultimately, I'm kind of invigorated by the change. I don't know that I'm not saying it's going to make this team better from day one, because that was never going to be the case. But I think maybe this could be the beginning of the end of, oh man, the cloud hanging over this, the ownership group, the payroll issues, the will he stay, will he go with some of their better players. Bottom line, when I come back to your core, and you kind of hinted at this in our last episode, you have a core of Buxton, Correa, Lewis. Not going anywhere, right?
I guess Lewis, yeah, but yeah.
Okay.
The pitchers, it was the two pitchers making up the core.
You've got Ryan and Pablo. And Pablo. You've got Ober, who has been very good, just not recently.
Outer core.
The foundation is still there for a good ball club. There have been teams with fewer good core players than this who've been playoff contenders, playoff like difference makers. I looked at that Tigers team last year, and after they traded Flaherty, like their entire lineup was guys with 7-something OPSs, and there were guys who were kind of like platoon players, guys who were, just like the pieces fit, but you don't have to be superstar laden to hang in this AL environment. And it may never be that way again. We're not in that era where the Yankees are going to go off and spend crazy. Well, I mean, they already have crazy money spent on Cole, Rodon, Fried, but they're not running away with anything. They're in the rearview mirror of the Toronto Blue Jays right now. And so I think this is a bit of a reset. Yes, we get attached to guys who've been here a while. Stewart to some extent, Duran especially, and because of how good and dominant he was. But if you're not breaking down the pillars, I don't know, you're not entirely rebuilding. Maybe this is for the best to just kind of shake things up a little bit.
I don't know if Falvey's lack of hesitancy to tear down at least the outside has anything to do with some inside knowledge on what's going on with the new ownership. Or maybe it's just a matter of time. We're closer to it than we were before, but he would know. I do think I don't have a problem with really how Falvey's constructed the team overall, but sometimes I do wonder if the situation were a little different. If AJ Preller were the general manager of this team, Jackson would be traded, Larnach would be traded, maybe Joe Ryan would be traded. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't like that part, but he something sort of tugs at me, which makes me wonder if that kind of teardown might not be worth it to a certain extent, and just leave the core four in there, the two offensive guys and two pitchers, and sort of build around that and try and be competitive next season. I wonder if something like that, I don't foresee, Larnach being moved or anything like that, but I think that would be something to think about. I know the Twins, regardless of what you think about, here's a good criticism of Falvey. He held on way too long of all the left-handed mid-power hitting guys that the Twins had. Eventually Alex Kirilloff retired, and they still have Larnach and Wallner, and there's a couple other guys that it was like the time when the Twins had all those Tylers. There were just so many left-handed power hitters would top out at 15 home runs. It's like, yeah, okay, we know. I think they probably could have done a better service to the roster by trading most of them or some of them or all of them. But they, I don't know, pride of ownership, whatever. And we'll see if Wallner is finally getting himself out of the woods. But, there's reasons to be frustrated with, why it's taken Royce Lewis so long. Some of it's injuries, but not all of it. It's not all injuries as to why Royce Lewis has not been, there's been lots of, he's been healthy for long periods of time, and he's still, he's getting some singles, but he's still not as hot as he was at the end of 2023. And maybe that was just an outlier, but Royce Lewis not bearing fruit, be it for reasons of injury or lack of production, has been a big downer as far as why the Twins haven't gotten better since they made the playoffs 2 years ago. So it's not all his fault, but mostly what Royce Lewis does these days is kind of make you turn your head in a funny way, like a dog, when they're like, what's he saying? Some strange quotes coming out of Royce, and fun, but also maybe indicative of a guy who's maybe never going to grow up. I don't know. So that's why I sort of hesitate to put Royce on the level of Correa or Buxton. And Correa this year is another guy. Now he's had some pretty good defensive moments. Maybe his defense hasn't been as good as it was last year, and we know he's not hitting as well as he did a year ago. The whole story with the Astros being interested in trading for him, that was really it seemed logical that maybe they would be interested. But what were the Twins even going to get back in that trade? Were they going to get back anything? Was it just, okay, we'll take Carlos Correa off your hands for $50 million, and you don't really get a player back, but we get Carlos Correa, and then you don't have to have him anymore. That seems like that was the trade.
And maybe Trevor Larnach. They wanted an outfielder too. So I don't know.
And him too. Well, they
wanted an outfielder. I would guess Larnach. I think it's funny that you said that Ober and Wallner have been off in the woods, because that's literal Sasquatch territory. Hey, let's take a quick second to reset, and then when we come back, I do still want to ask you about this Mason Miller trade. All right?
Yeah.
So, Dave, I got a lot of comments about the Mason Miller trade and how it reflected on the Twins' return for Jhoan Duran, and how they should have waited, until today. And I think that, it cuts both ways. The closer you wait to the deadline, it's kind of like waiting for an airline ticket. You can wait, and if there's a whole bunch of tickets available, it's going to be cheaper. But if you wait and it books up, suddenly you're left on the outside looking in. You got to kind of figure that out for yourself. I don't know. I don't think that I don't think that these two trades have that much connective tissue that it really concerns me that the Twins didn't get the number 3 overall pick or number 3 overall prospect in MLB. And I mean, JP Sears besides, pretty good pitcher. So Miller's got 2 more years of club control than Duran has, which is to say 4 and change. I have a hard time really comparing the two whatsoever.
If I can, related to your question, some people were like, that was a strange return for Eugenio Suarez, the 33-year-old hitter. But why was it, like a number 9 or 10 prospect for a team plus some other prospect? And why wasn't it more? It's because they don't have any control over him after this season, and he's a bat. Teams look at people like Miller or starting pitchers as a little more of X factors and game changers come playoff time. Guys who will be able to, in a pinch, win you a ball game, win you, more easily than, or more. It's more likely that they will than a hitter. So look at the Duran versus Miller trade in that sense, and you already touched on it. Yeah. How much time Miller has left on his deal. I'm not sure what JP Sears. I'm not up on his contract, but that's another player, a starting pitcher,
I'll pull it up
who
here.
the Padres can put into their rotation and give them lots of good stuff here in the last 40% of the season or wherever we're at, third 2 months, August, September, and into October. So Sears is part of the trade for sure.
Looks like he's ARB eligible after this year, and after 2028, he's a free agent. Does Fangraphs do theirs the same way Reference does, where when it says 2029, it means that their last year of control is the year before that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so then, it would either be 28 or 29, depending on how they do that. But either way, so you're talking about 6, 7, 8, at least 3 years of club control, although granted, perhaps not cheap. Sears, big homer numbers, but otherwise, I mean, 4.95 ERA backed up with a 4.01 xERA, xFIP, and FIP, all in that 4.5-ish ether. Big fly ball rate. I don't know. I mean,
that's good. That's okay. And Nick Pavetta's fine with that in San Diego. So Sears is a guy who will help him. It was funny. Sears was one of the guys on the A's who was kind of trying to embrace Sacramento as a destination. I think most of the players were non-committal, or maybe they're like, it's tough to leave Oakland or whatever. But Sears was a guy that's like, I'm going to Kings games and I'm going to be part of the community in Sacramento. And now they traded him. So,
by the way, Giancarlo Stanton ran into Jonathan Aranda, not the guy you want to get hit by in this game already.
Yeah.
Yandy Diaz, Chandler Simpson, and Jonathan Aranda in the first, third, and fifth innings. I'm telling you what, don't play the 7th inning or the 9th inning. That's too dangerous if you're the Rays.
So how many guys did Giancarlo Stanton run into?
This is only Aranda, but Diaz already left the game, and Chandler Simpson. But if they don't catch him and he left the game, he could be miles away by now the way he runs.
Hey-o. Simpson, eh? Okay, so is Aranda okay?
Left the game.
He left the game. Okay.
Yep.
And Simpson's out of the game.
Yep.
And
Diaz
is out of the game.
And Diaz had X-rays, and this is a wrist. This is a wrist for Aranda. So not one of those hinges you want to screw around with.
And how's Stanton?
Who knows?
Is he
honestly,
okay?
Who knows?
So he just hurt people. He didn't get hurt himself. Because that's a miracle.
Is he the hurt people example that we should go with? Hurting people hurt people.
Was Typhoid Mary just a carrier, or did she get sick too?
You wouldn't arrest a man delivering drugs from one person to another, like they said on The Office. It's just a lot going on. Only 6 teams playing today, as we had previously discussed, and so to have those going on while the deadline's coming up. I got about 23 more minutes, and then I'm going to have to get out of here. But who knows? Maybe we'll find time after I get back about 3:30 to hop back on again for a second deadline bonanza. Getting a lot of good.
If the Twins make more, I mean, I'm sure they're going to. The Twins are going to make another trade or two here in the next 3 hours. It would really surprise me if Danny Coulombe was not traded. Like he would be the guy.
Yeah.
If we had reversed ourselves here like 5 days ago, who's the most likely Twin to be traded? Danny Coulombe. And then he doesn't get traded. So I'm sure it's just going to be a last second thing. So, but to sort of wrap up your question about why didn't the Twins get all of what, why didn't they get the number 3 prospect in baseball for Duran? Well, I mean, there's lots of reasons. Miller has, at this point in time, has deadlier stuff. He's more of a coveted pitcher, which is funny because 6 weeks ago he couldn't get anybody out, which tells you how maybe it was a good idea for the Twins just to make this trade anyway, no matter what they got for Duran. That relief pitchers are so flighty and so unpredictable and so volatile. You never know when they're going to have to make some kind of major change just to keep getting people out. Not everybody is Aroldis Chapman, who's still throwing 105 miles an hour at 37 years old or whatever he is. Not everybody's Kennedy Johnson, who can roll with the punches and doesn't throw 100 anymore, but still is closing in on 400 and blah 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 saves in the Hall of Fame. There aren't too many guys like that. So the A's got more for Mason Miller and JP Sears because they're worth more than Jhoan Duran. Sorry to say, that's why. So they still the Twins got 2 top 100 prospects. Abel, I think, is going to be a number 3 starter, maybe more, maybe a number 4 starter, 3 or 4 starter on the bottom, maybe a number 2 starter on top in a few years. Think maybe Joe Ryan kind of deal where Ryan was a respected guy with the Rays, but has definitely added to his repertoire and his fastball. And we'll see if maybe the Twins are able to help another pitcher be the best he can be in the Joe Ryan fashion. I don't know if that's fair or whatever to the return that they got this time, but we'll see if that's what happens. So that's why the Twins players who were moved aren't as good as the ones who were moved to the Padres. It'd be nice to get a guy like DeVries. How old is he? Is he 19 yet?
I think I heard 19.
So
I mean, yeah. Hey, let's. I do want to do one thing. We're going to reset again here quickly, just to make sure the new prospects in the Twins system that we know of so far. Eduardo Tate slides in 4th between Luke Keeschel and Kalen Culpepper, so that's a pretty good spot to be.
Yeah.
Nick Abel takes over 6th between Culpepper and Dasan Hill. When he was acquired, Enrique Jimenez was 20th. Remember, we were debating, and I said somewhere between 18th and 20th. Did I not? He is now 22nd. Funny little note, though. Fun fact: Tate still has Phillies as the team next to him, but Abel doesn't. So that's an oversight by somebody in the clerical side.
I blame Carlos Correa, the Twins executive assistant. So
okay,
getting that right.
Let's take a quick reset, and when we come back, I still have lots to get to and not a lot of time, and who knows?
Hurry!
Twins may still make another trade or 2. Dave, what happens if they don't trade Willi Castro? Because, again, I feel like they have to. I really do. Not just because of him. I don't know if that was a ham-fisted way of trying to get him some sort of ovation. It was like nobody knew what was going on. It was no semblance. It was like the opposite of the Joe Mauer send-off in 2018, where everyone knew what was going on once he stepped out. And this was like, what the hell just happened here?
Yeah, I think it was, I guess it's obvious now, they weren't close to a deal at that time, but I feel like it was Rocco, it's one of Rocco's favorite players, perhaps to his detriment sometimes.
You wanted to do right by him.
Wanting to do right by him, and just and sort of maybe panicking and going, oh, forgot to do something for Castro. And I don't know. Rocco might overrate the feeling of Twins fans for Rocco.
Every Twins manager in my lifetime has had a utility player that they've clung to too tightly. It was Tom Kelly with Denny Hawking, Ron Gardenhire with Nick Punto. I don't know who you'd say Paul Molitor's was. I'm sure I'm just not remembering who it was. Eduardo Nunez, I don't know. But then you got Rocco with Willi, and they've progressively gotten better. Like they've gotten better to the point where would you QO Willi if he gets to the end of the season with the Twins? And I think that's where a trade, I wouldn't either, but that's where a trade would be most beneficial, because if you do QO him and say, hey, look, $20 million, take it or leave it, or you go sign your, what I think 3-year, $50 million deal. I don't know that the market's going to, I feel like he could be victimized by a similar market that hit Marwin Gonzalez when he landed in the Twins' lap.
I think Willi does seem like the kind of guy, I've said this before, who would get a 3-year, $50 million offer, 55, from some team that said, all right, we're going to put him at second base, or we're going to make him our leadoff hitter, or we're going to make him our number 2 hitter. In the right offseason, I could see that happening.
Yeah.
If you look at what everybody thinks is going to happen in Major League Baseball after 2026, I can see where that would maybe put a chill on this season's free agency. I don't know for a fact that that's true, but I could see how that could happen. So that might be bad timing. So you ask, would you give Willi Castro a qualifying offer? It doesn't matter what you or I think there. Is anybody going to give him $20 million? It isn't that much more, but it might be there might be a mental barrier there that other teams aren't going to be willing to do that. So I don't see.
I don't either. But they
have to trade him. I think they're going to trade. It's almost like Coulombe in a way. I see any way that they do not trade Willi Castro in the next 3 hours.
They've gotten out while the getting was pretty good on all of these guys. Even Paddock bringing back a decent catching prospect. We'll see what happens with him and all the good food and everything he's going to be eating in Detroit for the next months. And
you guys, the nutritionists here in Detroit are amazing.
Righteous. But beyond that, and you've got Bader bringing back a lefty outfielder that looks like he's got pretty good on base skills. I don't know, what the future looks like him as far as power or defense or anything like that. They've gotten out though. Like, okay, the point I'm maybe dancing around a little bit is, Daniel Kramer, I think it's MLB for the Mariners, says word is Minnesota has a tighter grip on Griffin Jacks after trading Jhoan Duran. You don't have a tighter grip on him and Louis Varland if you are planning on flushing all of this. Honestly, I think, and it sounds like Bednar's headed to the Yankees. It sounds to me like this is a flush. This is I don't want to say a toilet flush, but maybe like a sprinkler, flushing your sprinkler.
Courtesy flush.
Courtesy flush. A Kersey flush.
Not Kersey.
Not Kersey. Duran, though, the one I want to focus on, because he's the one with the years of control. I've asked you this. I'm probably just asking you in another way. You know how, like, when you're a kid and you go up to mom and ask her a question and you get the answer you don't want, so you ask it in a different way? Sometimes people do that with the manager, too. Like, what are you doing here pinch hitting Nick Gordon for this guy? Or what was the deal? I had Paul Muller got mad at me because I asked why Miguel Sano didn't hit for Danny Santana. That was a fun day. With Duran, you're looking at obviously high octane, but the strikeouts per nine or strikeout percent, 33.5 in his rookie year, 32.9 the year after that, 28.9 last year, 25.7 whip, 0.98 in his rookie year, 114, then 116, 118. Am I foolish to say, hey, some of these are kind of going in the wrong direction? Walk rate, 6.0, 9.8, 6.6, 8.7. That has left his strikeouts per walk, strikeout minus walk percentage from 27.4 as a rookie to 17% now. 17%, not really getting me all that excited. I'm not trying to diminish what he's been value-wise to the Twins. Tremendous reliever. I think there's a reasonable chance they've gotten out when the getting is good on Duran. That's not me wishing that. That's not me hoping for that. But the reality is guys who throw that hard and keep doing it are unicorns. Aroldis Chapman is a unicorn.
Duran, I think has done a pretty good job of trying to scope out, trying to get batters out with different pitches, reintroducing a slider or the that other kind of slider. What's it called? The sweeper. And he's got the splinker. And, yes, sort of circling back to also what we were saying before about Mason Miller. If Duran were still throwing 103 miles an hour and getting people out in the same way that he did in 2023, I'm not saying that a Mason Miller type return would have happened this time, but it would have been, instead of, two kind of back end top 100 prospects, maybe it would have been, somebody closer to the top 20 or whatever, getting back in the return. So did they move Duran, like a year early rather than a year late? That's possible. It's very possible, given for the reasons that you said. I think I don't know if he's on the verge of So, I don't know if they think he's on the verge of some type of injury or something that dramatic, but he could be on the verge of losing enough off his fastball or or not being able to add in a different way with his other pitches that his trade value is going to go down. So, it makes sense to me that they would move him now, and it makes sense that they got roughly what they got for him. So, yes, they are getting out with Duran while the getting's good. Maybe they left a little meat on the bone. I don't know. But I think it's reasonable to say that they punted a little early on him rather than waiting until it was too late. So, then what do we think they're going to do with the rest of the bullpen? Daniel Kramer says that the Twins are more likely to hold on to Duran. So this goes back to what we were saying before about how they're kind of tearing down the sides a little bit, but still keeping the core in position to be a contender or a pseudo contender in 2026. And of course, we make reference to the lockout that everybody thinks is coming in 2027. It makes sense for the Twins to, on all levels, to try and go for it, or at least not tear it down too much for next season, given that 2027 might not exist as we know it. So it makes sense whether you agree 100%, whether they got 100 percentile return on all the players that they've moved already. It makes sense that they're doing it how they're doing it.
Yeah, it's the end of the world as we know it, and we feel fine. That is to say, there might not be baseball after 2026 for a while. So we're going to enjoy it while it lasts. We'll reset here, and then I want to circle back on something that was asked in the chat that I think is a good question to address. David Bednar heading to the Yankees. Sounds like that's about a done deal. Lots of relievers moving. We'll see if and when Danny Coulombe joins that group. Seth Halverson, another guy to keep an eye on, Minnesota native. So I'm always going to be interested in that. Got that local angle that we got to adhere to.
Yes.
Let's see. The question that was in the comments. Brian White want to know, I'm not a billionaire. Join the club. Does this make the team more attractive? I don't think any of these trades do. I just think this is all. It might make the Pohlads happier to trade these guys, but I don't think it matters one bit to any prospective owner. Maybe, although if it's as far along as maybe we had been led to believe by Manfred during the All-Star break, maybe a prospective owner does have some, like when the manager gets thrown out of the game and he's yelling down the tunnel, maybe there's Bobby Valentine in a disguise, though, that kind of thing. I don't know if there's any sort of input with that said. Honestly, though, I'm at a crossroads here where I don't know what's going to come next, but my heart of hearts is hoping it's new ownership, because from that point on, you build a foundation. The rest of your building is going to hold up a lot better when you have something like that underneath it.
I feel like when it comes down to billionaires interested in buying teams, I don't know that the salary that the Twins are shedding really has much effect on how you feel about the asset that you're purchasing. I don't know if the guy's like, I was thinking about buying the Twins, but they kept that Harrison Bader guy, for $10 million instead of paying him $12 million or whatever the option was. So I just don't think that kind of micromanagement stuff matters. And like Brandon said, maybe it does to the Pohlads who have not made the move yet. They might be on the hook for a few $1 million here and there. Maybe they're looking for, they're like, yeah, Derek, go ahead, make these trades, change around the financials a little bit so we don't have to owe this guy $12 million and that guy $7 million and whatever Duran was set to get. So maybe from that standpoint, they like the idea of clearing the books in that respect, to the degree that we don't know when a sale is going to be finalized. So I don't know that means that the Pohlads would be to Falvey. Let's say things keep dragging on. Would the Pohlads say to Falvey in November when free agency season begins, no, we don't want you to spend that money back, put it back into the payroll? I don't know that that's true. I don't know. But at least for now, they don't have to worry about it. And that's okay. So maybe they'll pivot again in November and say, all right, we can get payroll back. We can add another $30 million to payroll or whatever it is that they chopped off before. So I think as far as the Pohlads go, it's a plus to not have the money on the books. Hopefully that doesn't mean that the payroll will be slashed again or more 2026 if the team still hasn't been sold. I want to be optimistic about that. I don't want to go chasing trouble, borrowing trouble. But I don't know. I know I speak for a lot of fans when I say I wish it would get done already.
Yeah. All right. I got to get out of here in less than 5 minutes. So the last thing we have, new joining the chat, Borglum, like Borgerschlett, I think. Who would be a surprise trade candidate you could see them moving in the next 3 hours? I'll start. Trevor Larnach. If someone wants left-handed thump, he's the corner outfielders with not great defense and can only hit one hand side or the other. Granted, it's the long side of a platoon if such a thing were to be deployed. I don't know. If someone comes and offers you something interesting for him, and then you say, listen, we're going to go with an outfield of Wallner in right and who even knows in left and Kiersey in center. I mean, it could get pretty bare here for a while until guys start coming back.
TC Bear's going to have to play? That's terrible.
Yeah. Maybe if he beat me in a home run hitting contest, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Larnach doesn't have the offensive upside of Wallner. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe that's the way to crystallize what my issue is with Wallner. So that's a possibility. You know who I would trade? I would be moving Brooks Lee. Honestly. Okay. I would if AJ Preller were running the show, Brooks Lee have been traded already. I see too many potholes in between his good hits. He's got some clutch in him, but I don't know exactly how valuable that is if he's going to go for long periods without doing anything. And
all right, but what are you targeting in a trade like that? Like,
I don't know. Someone else's Brooks Lee. I don't know. An outfielder.
I mean, how much value does he have? Could you piece him together with a couple prospects and get Sandy Alcantara?
What was his prospect? What was his first prospect ranking before last season?
He's probably like fourth in the Twin system, wasn't he? I mean, he's been a top 100 guy. I don't know.
He has. Brooks Lee's prospect ranking 35th, 18th, somewhere between 20th and 40. So it wouldn't be that good, but he's a guy that has experience. He's somebody that the Astros could have put at third base or second base.
Yeah.
I don't get the feel. I think they've got some pride of ownership, pride of draftsmanship with Lee. I think there's still some things to like about him, but that's a guy. If they were really edgy, that's a guy they'd move.
Yeah. I think if you beefed up a deal with him and a couple other prospects and got like Edward Cabrera, that could be a fun challenge trade. I like Edward Cabrera.
There you go. Brooks Lee for Edward Cabrera. Do it.
Okay. Well, I've got to run. I don't know if it'll work for you, Dave, to come back here. We're going to feed some ducks here while we get out. If we could hop back on 3:30, 3:45 for another half hour, we'll see what happens. We'll see what Dave's schedule looks like and mine as well. But it sounds as though there may be some interest from our listeners, which would be pretty dang cool. Hey, this has been a tremendous trade deadline hour hanging out with all of you. And who knows, maybe we'll have another one here in a little bit. But he's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warne saying thank you so much. This has been Locked On Twins live. We are 3 hours from the deadline. Be good.
Alex, I can see it today.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.